Okay, good evening, everyone. Um, this is Mrs. Ganaris, and tonight we have Miss Farrell, who is helping us with broadcasting this event. And so she's going to help us as we move through the PowerPoint. But before we get started, Miss Farrell, if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. So before we get started, of course, we want to welcome you all back to school. I was just sitting here thinking before we logged on that it's been almost a year since we parted ways here in the school building, and I'll never forget that day because I was leaving the building and thinking, what am I going to do with myself for 3 weeks? They had told us it was 3 weeks, and I was really unnerved about that. And who could have thought that it would turn into a year? And so with us coming up on our anniversary of being virtual, we are now thinking about bringing our kids back into the building and hopefully moving back into some normalcy. And I just have to tell every single one of our families how excited we are to begin this next endeavor within the COVID-19 pandemic. And hopefully returning to normal here soon. But before I get started, I also want to thank all of our parents because this truly has been a partnership. And it definitely has been with great pride as your school principal for our staff and for all of our parents together working through this pandemic together has really made it much more successful than we could have ever hoped for our students. And we do appreciate your partnership. And we're looking forward into this next phase. So with that, I'm going to introduce some of our staff members that are here today that have been critical in planning our reentry to Sparrows Point Middle School. So I will start by introducing Miss Owens, who is our 6th grade administrator and assistant principal.
Good evening, Sparrows Point Middle School families, and welcome to our reentry informational night. As Ms. Ganaris said, my name is Mrs. Owens. I'm the 6th grade administrator. And yes, it is reentry for our 7th and 8th graders, but for many of our 6th graders, this will be their initial entry into the school building. And we've only at this point known them through the virtual environment. We are anxiously awaiting to see your children. They have been delightful and virtual, and I know they'll be even more enjoyable when we actually have an opportunity to meet and work with them face to face. There'll be lots of wonderful things going on in school, but what you need to know is you have a faculty and staff here that is absolutely wonderful. They love their students, they love their parents, and they're here to help you in any way that you need to in order to make this a very smooth transition, not only for your child, but for you as well. So on that note, I'd like to also turn it over to our other assistant principal, Miss Sutton.
And good evening, families. I'm Miss Sutton. I am the other assistant principal here. And as Ms. Owens said, I am so excited to welcome everybody back to the building. These are unprecedented times, and I think that our staff and our students and our families have risen to meet the challenge. And so now as we prepare to come back in a different way, but in a much needed way, we are making sure that we have protocols and procedures in place to keep everyone safe as we provide instruction in a different way. So we are excited to see everyone. Looking forward to meeting everyone. And as Ms. Owens had said, we are always here to support everyone in whatever way you need. And with that, I'm going to introduce Ms. Chadwick, who is our guidance department chair. Ms. Chadwick.
Good evening, everybody. I am Ms. Chadwick, like Ms. Sutton just shared, and I will also be your baby 6th grade counselor. So I will be with them for the long haul from 6th to 8th grade. And I am excited to meet them in person. I have some of them in my virtual groups, and like Ms. Owen shared, they have been delightful in this virtual setting. So with that said, I want to introduce my counterpart and partner who will be supporting with transitioning the kids back to school, Ms. Gordon. My counterpart is coming from volleyball training, so she may transition in a little bit later. But like I said, she will be with me assisting, and she is our second counselor in the building. And you guys will meet her probably at the end of this Q&A. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to our fabulous 6th grade team leader, Ms. McQuaid.
And I'm wondering if Ms. McQuaid is in the other link and is unable to unmute herself. So Ms. McQuaid, if you make your way back to this link, I'll see you pop up, and we'll take some time to introduce you as well. Okay, Ms. Farrell, we'll go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so this evening, our agenda, we're going to cover health and safety procedures, parent agreement forms, school schedules, what the hybrid virtual classroom instruction will look like. We will talk about some social emotional learning that'll be provided, and then some overall student expectations. So if you look at this visual here with hybrid learning model in the middle, all of those things around it really are what we really need to strategically plan, including scheduling, the health and safety mitigation, transitions in the hallway, down to how we're setting up the classrooms and what technologies our teachers will need, and their training. So there's been a lot of very meticulous detail that's gone into this plan. And so as we go through, parents are welcome to post questions. There's a button to the right of your screen where you can ask a question and submit it. Ms. Owens and Ms. Sutton will be looking at that, as well as Ms. Farrell, and we'll make sure to get to all of your questions at the end. And I know it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information that's been emailed. I know that every time, and I'm a parent too, of 2 students who attend Baltimore County schools, and I know that the information is flying on a daily basis. So that being said, if you have questions after this, we are just an email away. And I saw Ms. McQuaid just popped up, so I'm going to pause and let her introduce herself because she is our 6th grade team leader.
Hello, fabulous parents. I'm having technical issues over here, like that's something new. But I am the 6th grade team leader, and I am here to help parents, students, grandparents, whoever is there to support your child. I'm here to support them here at the school. And if you need me, I'm just an email or a phone call away. And I'm so excited to see you guys.
Thank you, Ms. McQuaid. Ms. Farrell, you can go ahead on to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to, before we begin with all the details of our plan, I wanted to make sure that our families know that everything that we planned was grounded in the BCPS reopening plan. This is the plan that is on the Baltimore County webpage. It's a very detailed plan, and there were guidelines in there provided to principals for us to plan how we would provide safe re-entry to schools for our students. Also embedded in that plan is guidance from the CDC. Now, you know that we are also a shared building here, so we're the middle school and the high school in one school building. So the procedures that we put into place was designed collaboratively with our high school counterparts to make sure that our daily routines and procedures are consistent building-wide. Okay, so as we go through, you'll hear more about mask requirements, which will be required every day, both inside and outside when students are on school campus, unless they're eating or they're taking a designated socially distanced mask break, or they're engaging in rigorous exercise. We're going to go into the social distancing requirements, the need for contact tracing and procedures around that. Daily cleaning and disinfecting, which I know that is definitely a concern for parents, students, and teachers, and I believe that we have a very good plan to address that. And so some other things in terms of occupancy areas, And then, of course, instruction and how will that look different? And how will we be providing for social emotional learning? Because I know that students are also coming back to us, with possible gaps in their learning. Also, maybe with some anxiety about what it looks like to return to the building and staying safe. So all those things we're going to cover, and that all was very our guiding points as we develop this plan. So I'm going to get right into the nitty gritty, and you can go to the next slide, Ms. Farrell. Okay, first thing, arrival and dismissal. And I'm going to put a bigger picture on my screen over here because this is really little for me to look at. And I've been staring at a screen so a long time, and I think my eyes have really not gone downhill ever since this started. But so arrival and dismissal. It is our responsibility to make sure that our kids are socially distanced during arrival and dismissal. And because of that, what we did is we designated 3 different entries for our students. So our 6th graders will enter the building and exit the building every day by the auditorium entrance. And I have provided a picture right up there for you. So they'll enter that by the auditorium and they'll exit by the auditorium. 7th and 8th graders, if anyone out there has a 7th or 8th grader student attending Sparrows Point Middle School, 7th graders will enter by the main lobby middle entrance, and 8th graders will enter and exit by the cafeteria. One of the things that's really important to know is that our teaching staff is on duty at 7:50. At the same time, at 7:50 is when we open the doors to students. So what's going to be critically important is that students are not dropped off earlier than 7:50. It is our responsibility to make sure that proper mitigation is happening even prior to entrance. So one of the things that requires us to do is to make sure that students aren't congregating. So that being said, if you are getting to work or, driving your student or they're walking, 7:50 is when they should be allowed to leave their cars or arriving to school, because again, that is to reduce the likelihood of congregating outside of the school building. Okay, and again, there's the sign there that you see on the front door is the mask sign. So even when they get out in the morning and they're ready to come into school, they need to have that mask on. Okay. Also, another really important thing I need to let families know is in that very first picture, you'll see the parking lot that is on the side of the building. That parking lot is designated for students that are car riders and being dropped off to school. So what you'll do is you'll go into that parking lot where the highs is, you'll loop around and you'll stop right there until 7:50, and then that's when we'll start receiving students. You don't want to park in any parking spaces there because it is a teacher faculty lot. So, we'll keep you guys going and we'll keep that process going. It should not tie you up in the morning because our kids are coming back in a hybrid way. So it will only have half of our students back. So we won't have the traffic that we would normally have when all students are returning. Another area that parents should never park is at the volunteer fire department, which is right near Food Lion. The volunteer fire department volunteers reach out to us quite often about cars being parked where the fire trucks are, and in the case of an emergency, if there were a car to be parked there dropping a student off or picking a student up, that prevents them from getting out as quickly as possible. So again, parents are strongly encouraged to use that parking lot for all drop off and pickup. Okay. All right, go ahead to the next slide, Ms. Farrell. Okay. Here is a picture of how our classrooms and cafeteria look. So what we have right now in the classroom is we have gone through and we've removed a lot of desks and redistributed those desks throughout the building so that we have desks that are 6 feet apart. We did receive a lot of PPE materials that we were able to purchase through the CARES grant through the Baltimore County government. So all of those desks in the classroom have the Plexi Shield on it. There are also, you'll see in the middle, the contact tracing, we have numbers on every desk. So each desk in the classrooms, each desk in the cafeteria, they're all numbered. So students will come in and they will have a number of a desk that they will sit in every single classroom. So they will have assigned seating. They'll need to adhere to that assigned seating in the event that we need to do contact tracing. So if we do have a student that has tested positive for COVID, the nurse will investigate that and we'll be able to provide the nurse with where that student was throughout the day. Okay. In the cafeteria, we have also moved a lot of desks in the cafeteria. We have this cafeteria marked off into various different zones. So students will again receive assigned seating in the cafeteria. We also do have outdoor seating during lunchtime that will be available depending upon weather and depending upon the amount of spots that kids can go outside. But even outside, we had our office staff who has been outstanding in helping us get all this together. They were out this week blocking off places where kids can sit for lunch outside as well. And so that they know which seats are open and what seats are closed to maintain that social distancing. Okay, Ms. Farrell, you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay. Another really important factor is daily sanitizing and disinfecting. So with the PPE grant, we also ordered a ton of hand sanitizer. We have hand sanitizer pumps. We have hand sanitizer dispensers that are hung to the wall outside the cafeteria and the main entrance. We also purchased individual standing sanitizers that will go into every single classroom. Okay, so the procedure for students entering the classroom is they will enter the classroom, they'll sanitize, they'll sit at their desk, and what we're practicing is in terms of sanitizing between use, because kids will be switching classes when they go into a classroom. It's the common courtesy rule of you clean what you touch. So, and the same thing goes for teachers. When teachers come in and use the copy machine, they take a sanitizer wipe and they wipe off the copier machine. So kids, when they come in the morning, if they sit at a desk, well, they will be sitting at a desk, they'll get a sanitizer wipe. And so it'll be their responsibility to sanitize the desk and the seat, sanitize their hands, throw the sanitizer in the trash can and leave and go into the next classroom where they'll go sit in at a desk that has also been sanitized, and the teachers will be in there supervising that. Okay, so we also then, on top of that, our custodial staff goes throughout the day sanitizing high touch surfaces like railings going up and down the steps, door handles, let's see what else, the handles going in and out of the bathrooms and things like that. So they're sanitizing throughout the day. However, at the end of the day, they do a deeper clean. So that's when they go in and they wipe down all the desks, sanitize the desks, sanitize the chairs. And then at the end of the day, when teachers leave and after that classroom has been sanitized, then no one can return until the next day. And so I'm going to get my larger screen up here to see if I've missed anything here. And I think I have it all. Okay, so Miss Farrell, you can go ahead on to the next one. All righty. Signage is everywhere. So we have gone through and we have divided the hallways down the middle. So we have lanes that kids will travel. And also within those lanes, there are markers for social distancing. We have labeled the doors of each classroom as there's an indoor and an outdoor. And we have also identified the stairwells, which will be up stairwells and down stairwells. In some cases, our kids travel out to the cottages. And when they travel out to the cottages, they'll go out a certain door down the science hallway, and then they'll come in by the art hallway. So we're creating traffic patterns where we won't have students passing each other in the hall and being tempted to high five or, bump or, do a lot of the goofy things that our middle schoolers tend to do. So I think that's all for that one. You can go ahead to the next slide, Ms. Farrell. Okay. We do have maximum capacity limits and procedures for the bathrooms. And what we have done to accommodate this, because bathrooms are, we don't have a lot of bathrooms, and I'm going to be straightforward with that. We typically use the main hallway bathrooms, but what we have done to offset the bathroom space and use coming back in the hybrid environment and having to maintain the capacity limits is we have identified 2 more bathrooms that students can use. So there's a bathroom that students can use in the science hallway, in the main hallway, and also down by the gym. So what will happen is that when a student needs to use the bathroom, the teacher will call up to the office, because we can't have lots of kids congregating in the hallways. And then we'll make sure that there's not a long line, more than 5 kids in line for the cafeteria to use the bathroom. We have staff members that will be posted at each bathroom to monitor, the in and out. You go in, we have 2 people in, next people in line, and to monitor that they're maintaining their social distance in the hallway. So if your student has a need to use the restroom more regularly or more often than normal due to a health concern, please reach out and let us know so that we can take that into consideration. And I'm going to look at my bigger screen here because I need to make sure I didn't miss anything there. Okay, I think I got it all. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so the health suite visits. I have to say, the rule of thumb is if your child is showing any sign, any COVID-like symptom, that you should not be sending them to school. They can stay home and participate virtually if they're showing any signs. If we have a student in the building that is demonstrating signs or is saying they feel ill, they'll be immediately sent home. We do have established 2 isolation rooms for students that do fall into this category so that they're not around other students possibly spreading any kind of germs. So with that being said, we sent home 2 electronic forms, and you did get 2 more forms in the mail where you'll identify 4 emergency contacts. And that's really important because if a child does come into school, comes down with symptoms or is saying they feel ill, they will need to be picked up as immediately as possible. And I think that is all for there. And I know you might have more questions about that, and we can get to those questions at the end. You can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, food service. Well, the good news is breakfast and lunch is available at no cost to all students. It will be offered as a grab and go. So in the morning for breakfast, students will come in the doors, whatever their assigned door is, and they will have the option to grab a breakfast on their way to the classroom. For first period, students will be allowed to eat their breakfast in the classroom. They'll be socially distanced behind their shield. They can, of course, take their mask off when they're eating or drinking, and then put it back on when they're finished. They'll throw the trash away, sanitize the desk. And then in the cafeteria, the same procedure. They'll just go down. It's a grab and go. And so that'll be the same procedure. One thing that I really, really want to stress to parents is to make sure you're sending your child to school every day with a pre-filled water bottle. We have had to block off all of our water fountains and water coolers, so they will not be available. So, in order to keep your student hydrated, make sure that they have a water or something like that with them throughout the day. And of course, if a student needs to take a drink, they can remove their mask, take a drink, put their mask back on. Okay, you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so in my last mailing, and it was the email. So this is two things. I don't want to get anybody confused here. We have a mailing which contained the Sparrows Point hybrid learning packet for parents, and that had all the schedules and a lot of these procedures written in more detail. I also sent 2 electronic forms, which are attestations, and one is an agreement form. So the health attestation, what that is, it's a screening. So that form has to be completed before your student even comes back the first day. And then it needs to be completed each month thereafter. And so what that form says is that you guys are looking at your kids and just doing a daily health check and screening every day before sending them in. And that form goes into more detail, such as, does your child have, a cough or a cold or a low fever? Do they have a temperature, body aches, chills, things like that, so that you're really monitoring your child before you're sending them in, and you're considering keeping them home or choosing to keep them home and have them do virtual instruction if they're demonstrating any of those symptoms. And so along with that form, that's where you put in the 4 emergency contacts who can pick your child up in the event that you need someone to come pick them up because they're feeling ill. Also on that form, you'll be able to put down on that form whether or not or how your child is arriving and being dismissed, because even during dismissal, at the end of every day, they'll stay in the classrooms. As we're kicking it elementary style, where you stay in your classrooms and you're called, whether you're a car rider, a walker, or a bus rider, and what bus number you are. So we'll have like a slow, steady transition for dismissal too. So if you'll indicate how they're arriving and being dismissed. Miss Farrell, I had put a note on there, and in this slide, there's a link to the health and the COVID-19 health screening checklist. Are you able to pop that in the chat? Or maybe Miss Chadwick can pop it in the, actually, I can pop it in the chat, I think. Hold on one sec. And then you can post this. I'm going to pop that in right now. And there it is. So if you haven't filled out that form, there's the link right there. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Alrighty, and so now here's another form, and I'll pop this one in here next, but there's another form, and this is a mitigation agreement. And so what this form says is that you've discussed the mitigation procedures, and that parents and students agree to wear the face covering, and there's the criteria for wearing the face covering and following all the mitigation procedures. And that includes the 6-foot distance, staying in your assigned seats, which I'm going to tell you they're not going to like. I know they're not going to like it, and we don't like it either, but it's a necessary part of the return. That they're following the transition patterns in the hallway and making sure that they're staying in that assigned seat. And we have to say, and I think this is on the next slide, that students who are unable to follow these procedures, we will have to apply disciplinary measures to that. So I am going to now copy that form, and that's just an agreement that you'll need to complete that link. And we'll have that electronically too. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now as well. Okay, and there's the next one. Okay. You can go ahead to the next slide, Miss Farrell. Okay, and here we have the rules. And so some of those I just went over with you, but they're expected to follow that health and safety mitigation procedures. Students are expected to bring their computers every day charged and with a charger. That is still very, very necessary, even though that they're coming back in person, they're still going to need their devices and cell phones. And let me tell you, this is the battle, the never-ending battle. And so we really do appreciate our parents supporting us on this. Cell phones should remain in a student's backpack at all times. We believe that students need to be fully engaged in their learning, and that cell phones cannot be a part of that. So we do follow a disciplinary process for cell phones. At first, we talk to the students, we'll hold it for them, and then eventually, if it's just not working, the teachers will take it and have a parent come pick it up at the end of the day. So cell phones, again, we should not see them at all on their person. They can stay in their backpacks. Students won't be using lockers, so you know, they do need to have that backpack, and that's where that cell phone should stay. And it is one of the biggest battles we fight. So parents, have our back on this one. We'll really appreciate it. So we also encourage you to look through that behavior handbook for this school year. As with any school year, you know, we follow the behavior handbook just in terms of, you know, the telecommunication policy, you know, being respectful, you know, not bullying, all those good things. That we monitor with our students, you know, all apply when we come back to the hybrid model too. If we do have a student that's unable to adhere to these rules and policies, we will follow the disciplinary procedure. Usually what that entails is we do a first time talk, intervention, phone call. The second time comes with a talk, intervention, phone call, and some sort of consequence. And if it's more persistent, you know, we may be talking about whether or not that, you know, being here in a hybrid way is the most appropriate at this time. So, you know, that's definitely not the direction we want to lead, but we definitely want to be clear with parents and students that, you know, that's kind of the ladder we work from. Okay, next slide. Scheduling. Oh, I know. I am sure that you guys are like, how many more schedules are we going to have to get used to? I got another one. Okay. And we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So what you see up here is the daily hybrid schedule. And that was developed intentionally to provide specific time for that sanitizing and transition in the building, because we'll be transitioning 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So you'll see all of that color coded in this schedule. And students are going to learn about their new schedule and make their own individual schedules during their advisory session this Friday. So again, if parents want more information about the schedule, you're welcome to listen into that advisory session. The schedule, the good news is the schedule doesn't look that much different from the schedule we're using now. It is important to note, I did send something out about, you know, AA, BB, BB, AA, and all these different A days and B days. Really, what that affects is the rotation by which students will see their special area classes. Okay, so we want to make sure that all students have an opportunity to see all teachers. And so that's why we had to adjust that AA-BB schedule so that they have that opportunity to see their teachers. One thing that is new going into the hybrid learning, this next phase, is Wednesday attendance to all classes is required. So this is no longer if we need you, show up. This is if you want to be marked in attendance, you show up. And on the next slide, I have what that schedule will look like every Wednesday. But basically, it's like a half-day schedule where students will every 25 minutes check into their next teacher. If the teacher doesn't need them to be there, they'll dismiss them. But in order to be marked in attendance, they need to show up to those classes. Okay, you can go to the next slide. All right, now I'm going to get even crazier with the schedule. And let me tell you, I had a hard time. Thank goodness I have Miss Sutton here and Miss Chadwick who are used to these secondary schedules, because the scheduling is a lot. So this is just for the week of March 15th. So what's important to know is that the week of March 15th, and that's next week, we will go back to our normal bell schedule, okay? And that is class starts at 8:05. Okay, so we have our first bell at 7:50. That's when we open our doors in the morning. At 8:05, students are in class ready to learn. Students arriving after 8:05 are marked late. So that's whether your student is virtual or in person. 8:05 is when we start class, starting on Monday. So what is also important to note is next week, particularly for our 6th graders, teachers will be returning that week. One of the things that we need to provide to our teachers is some release time so that they're preparing the classroom to receive students and set up the technology and the learning space. So for all 6th grade, this coming Monday, they will be receiving asynchronous instruction in all of their classes. Okay, so again, they'll receive asynchronous instruction in all of their classes on Monday. So that means they'll access that independently and the teachers will post it. Okay, when you look at the Friday, teachers will get a half day that day, meaning that students will not have, 6th graders will not have advisory. Okay. Wednesday, and that's where I said there's that half day schedule. That is the schedule that students will follow on Wednesday. Okay. Here's another thing that's really important to know is that our students have become very, very accustomed to using teachers' office hour time to catch up on assignments. And so what's important to get your students ready for is that that office hour time is not going to be available as it once was, because our teachers are going to be in the building supervising student transitions. So I tell you that because when your students are home working virtually, they need to complete their assignments during that class period. So they need to be paying attention and listening and doing the work when they're asked to do the work. Because they will not have the option to meet with the teacher later to get the instruction that they missed, because that time will no longer be available as it once was. Teachers can do that during Wednesdays, but that other office hour time will not be there any longer. Okay, so I want to make sure everyone's clear on that. You can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so what is instruction going to look like? What's going to be different? Let me just first say, I have to like give a plug out to my teachers because they've learned to teach a different way at least 2 times now in the past year, and we're going into a 3rd. So if you can just imagine, our teachers are going to be setting up classrooms we're getting them tripods with, you know, a webcam, and so they'll have headphones that are wireless where they can mute it or talk and walk around. Some teachers are asking for the swivel so that webcam can follow them. So there's a lot of technology that goes into moving toward this hybrid learning environment to make sure that everyone's getting exactly what they need. So the first 2 weeks, be a little patient with us. We're getting used to it and we're troubleshooting as we go along. But I can tell you what you can expect is that your students will be receiving, whether they're in person or at home, concurrent learning, meaning that the direct instruction that the teacher provides in the formative assessment will be the same, whether they're in person or they're at home. Okay, so that'll be done, as I would say, in a parallel way. So everyone will be receiving that same instruction. Then you move down to the separate learning. So some things might be different. So whereas once the teacher would pose a question and students put it in the chat post, our virtual students will continue to do that, while our students in person may have class discussion, or they may use a dry erase board or something else. Okay, students will still have options for small group and independent practice. The teacher may vary that. We might have the students in front of us doing the independent practice so the teacher can meet with a small group online and vice versa. So those things will be varied. In a lot of our classes, we have co-teachers or extra support staff. So, you know, those teachers will be used to support and differentiate and monitor and help make sure that we're keeping all the kids engaged, whether in front of us or in person. But certainly our students in person will be able to have an option to do those paper pencil tasks. I know some teachers, what they'll do is they'll give them that option and the students can still take a photo of it and upload it to their computer to still reduce that paper passing. But definitely we hear our students, they need that screen break, they need to use paper and pencil, they need to actually authentically read, and so on and so forth. And we will definitely make sure that they have those options in person. While they're virtual, they'll still use those online tools. And finally, we have collaborative learning. And so that's at the highest level of when we get back. And I hope that we're going to be working toward that. But it will take some time as we become comfortable with this new learning model. And so what that would be is they're pairing a student, in-person learner with a virtual learner to communicate and collaborate and still make sure that we're building those relationships between our students, whether they're in person or at home. So our teachers also are phenomenal at using what's called Google Breakout Rooms. So then, you know, they assign kids to rooms and they give them specific instructions of like, this is what the task you're working on to accomplish, you know, and these are the roles and this is what you're required to turn in. And then the teacher checks on them. So those things will still be used. And I just anticipate that it's going to be very, very different at first. We're going to work out some kinks, but I know my teachers, they're hard workers, they're high achievers. They have high expectations for themselves, and I know that by the time we finish this year, they'll be the new experts on this. So I'm fully confident. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I'm going to hand it over to Miss Chadwick.
All righty, everybody. Before we start, I want to take a moment to acknowledge my lovely counterpart. We are a small school, so although I'm assigned to 6th grade, Miss Gordon may sometimes work with some of your students. So I'm going to give her a moment to introduce herself.
Thank you, Ms. Chadwick. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Alicia Gordon, and I am one of the other school counselors, and we are so excited to work with your students and welcome those back in the building and those that are remaining virtual. We're still excited to do the work we've been doing. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. So that's my lovely counterpart, and we call ourselves the CARE team. And the CARE team consists of myself and Ms. Gordon. We do have a full-time social worker, which a lot of schools do not have, a social and emotional learning teacher, who is awesome and has been really helpful in this virtual learning environment and getting kids motivated to participate in virtual learning. And we do have a partnership with the Children's Guild. So with your partnership, we're kind of dedicated to making this transition as seamless as possible. So as we're transitioning back, you guys just got a lot of information and we'll be digesting that with your student, but we want you to consider having some conversations about hybrid learning. Some of your kids may be really excited about returning and some may be on the fence, but these are just some talking points that help bridge the conversation and helping them transition back. So ask your student how they're feeling about going back to the building for a few days. And these are just open-ended conversations that you can have maybe at dinner or during leisure time. Ask your student if there are things that concern them, if they have any questions. And as we discussed earlier, and Ms. Ganaris has went over, discuss having realistic expectations. So not only is this the first time for your babies in middle school, but it's going to look extremely different from when they were in elementary school. And you guys have got a sneak peek of what the desks will look like with the plexiglass in place, the lines in the hallway. So start preparing them for this. We have a little bit of time before they can get back to us. And ask them, are they prepared to wear masks during the entire school day? So at home, they're home, they don't have to wear a mask. And if they're not out in the community and they're not wearing a mask as frequently or for as long as they will be in the school building. So start having them practice wearing that mask for an extended period of time, because it is difficult to have the mask on the proper way with mouth and nose covered for that extended time. So also normalize their feelings. It is okay to feel nervous. It's okay, as Ms. Ganeri said, to feel unhappy about some of the rules that are in place. So just give them the space to discuss that with you. And that's why we're here. So if you come up with some things that maybe you are having difficulty discussing with your student before they get back, Ms. Gordon and I are here to facilitate those conversations, check in with your student if that is necessary. And so have them start participating in safe activities to have them acclimated to coming in our building. So for instance, there's mask policies in virtually every place we go now, having trips to the store, the mall, and having them practice those social distancing process in those places. And reassure them that while this is challenging, that we're all going to get through this and we're going to get through this together. So how can you guys access the school counselor as well as your students? So we're going to continue to receive messages from students via Schoology. That has been our primary source of communication with our students. And just like we were doing when we were all virtual, we will respond within 24 hours. For parents and families, if you guys call our voicemail in the school building and leave us a voicemail, it comes directly to our email. So we will get that and we will respond to you within 24 hours. We are going to continue to do virtual Google Meet appointments because the focus is, because they have been out at school for this point for almost a year, is for them to be in the classroom as much as possible to fill in those gaps. If a student needs to be met in person, we may have to hold it in outside locations or a spacious environment. As you can see from that picture, this is a snapshot of Ms. Gordon's office, so you'll see the plexiglass in place. And so most cases we'll be trying to hold those meetings because it's a small space with no ventilation and an outside location. However, if we need to have those meetings in our offices, it will be with a protective barrier in place, just like they're used to seeing in the classroom. And we kind of want to emphasize that because of where we are in the main office, that students will be unable to remain in the counselor's office for extended periods of time. So if they're having difficulty being in the classroom, we'll reach out to you, we'll discuss things, we'll try to put a plan in place, maybe plan breaks in that day. But the goal is for them to stay in the classroom as much as possible to get acclimated to instruction in this new hybrid setting. And so we are a school community and we include parents in that community circle. If you guys need support, we are here, and here are a few things that we can help with. I know you guys have seen a couple of schedules, so we foresee our kids reaching out to us and asking us where should we be. So reach out to us if you have questions about the schedule. We are going to help them acclimate to hybrid learning, and we're going to be that buffer connection between teachers and improving their academics. We are continuing to do the college and career exploration. As a matter of fact, when we come back in the building, not too long after that, we will be celebrating Career Day as a school. We do help with providing outside counseling services for things that our students may need beyond a basic check-in. And we can help locate community resources. So we do have a food pantry in our school, and if there are other resources that you may need, we can help you with tapping into those. And we also can point you, the families and students, in the direction of volunteer activities. And as you can see, my caseload is grade 6 and 7th grade M through Z, and Ms. Gordon has all of 8th grade and 7th grade A through M. But we are a team, the two of us, and if anything needs to be done, her and I will collaborate together.
Okay, and I can take it over. Final words, there we go. So I am just going to end with, I am looking at some questions here, and I'll go over those questions at the end. But I did send home, I did send the packet. I know mail's been a little bit slow, but the packet was sent home in the mail on Friday, which contained the parent-student hybrid guide with all of this information, the agreement forms and the attestation forms, or if you filled them out digitally, that's fine too. So also in there was a supply list, and we do have quite a long supply list of things that we need, like pencils and markers and glue sticks and things like that. We are trying to avoid sharing supplies at all costs, just to minimize the need to disinfect things once they've been used. As you can imagine, that can be, quite a task. So please consult that list. We're asking for students to have 1 notebook and 1 folder per class. So you'll see all that information there in that packet. Also, we have posted all of this information on our website. So if you didn't get the packet, you can find that on our website. And I also sent it via email to each cohort last Friday. And I'll keep sending these out so that parents have a copy to save. Transportation information is forthcoming. What they're doing is they are looking at, they have our deadlines, and so one of the deadlines is Friday. By Friday, any students who are returning in 6th grade or by the week of April 6th, that's their deadline to request that. Then what happens is transportation will look at those cohort numbers and they'll develop those bus routes. And so we'll be sharing that information once we receive that. And I also want to say I'm looking through some of the questions here, so I'll just answer some of these. I think everyone now has the form. There was a question about if not receiving the packet in the mail, but you know where to receive that now. You know how to fill out those forms electronically, and that'll suffice. There was a question about if a student is staying virtual, do they need to fill out those 2 forms? We do not need you to fill out those 2, the attestation and the agreement, unless your student is returning. But thank you for asking, and we're glad that for some of our students that virtual learning was a success, and we have had a lot of that. I've had students reach out and said, you know what, I've really done well virtually. I think I'm going to continue. So glad to hear that was working and that found success in that. So another question is about lunch. So with lunch, right now and I'm going to just say anticipating, but right now we're anticipating that lunch is going to be the B lunch schedule, which would be around 12:30 according to the schedule, but that may change. We are determining lunch based on the numbers of students in each cohort. So we have to make sure those numbers are balanced in the cafeteria so that we can accommodate the number of students during the 2 lunch shifts that we have. So right now, anticipate lunch B, but just putting it out there, that might change when we look at our final cohort numbers this Friday. A schedule to print out for next week. I am going to send that in my Friday update. And if you are not receiving those Friday updates via email, please reach out to us, because I do have a list right now that I'm keeping of parents who aren't receiving those emails. Okay. Okay. So yes, so this is how scheduling gets a little confusing. So here's a question: if my child is in cohort B, does that mean we should follow the B lunch schedule? No. If your student is in cohort B, they still may have a lunch. Okay, so the schedule that you follow is depending upon what lunch they are assigned, and we haven't assigned the lunches yet, but we're pretty sure it's going to be a B lunch. So to answer your question, your child in 6th grade, cohort B, may have B lunch, while as another child in cohort A may also have A lunch. Okay, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So the lunch schedule that virtual students follow, that will also be assigned. And so that's, during that time, you'll just be, students will have their screen break and have lunch. It won't be as long as the lunch that they have now. It'll be almost as long because we built in transition time, but it will be it will be whatever we're signing 6th grade is what you'll have too. Okay, so all the students, they're going to make that schedule on Friday. Okay, so your students will know what time their lunch is. I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any other questions. And if there's anything that I have missed, Miss Sutton and Miss Owens, Miss Chadwick, you're welcome to jump in there. Miss Sutton, I see you. You're good?
I think you're good. I was answering the messages in the chat is the Q&A as well, but it was sent private, so I forgot you couldn't see that the responses were there.
Okay.
But I gave people my contact information if they had any additional questions going forward, so that's always there. But no, I can't think of anything else.
Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. And it's a lot. We have been swimming in it. Seas of information and tedious details, and is finally committing to memory. So we're ready to do this. So just have no fear. We got this. If there's something you don't understand or you have questions about, you just reach out. We return emails, within 24 hours, if not sooner. So thank you all for joining tonight, and we are looking forward to the next phase, and enjoy the rest of your evening.